and we'll I give everybody like a couple minutes to log in.
Okay.
Because we got Facebook going and YouTube.
I got you. Well, Chris, thanks for having me out today.
Yeah, man. I wish it were under, I guess, better circumstances because, we're all stuck in the house and trying to figure out other stuff to do and keep
100%.
occupied and whatnot. So
100%.
But guys, welcome. Those of you logging on. This is Chris Birch, Entrepreneur Strategies, and we have Mr. Josh Cohen with us today from DC First Properties. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So what I wanted to do today is kind of give our followers, we're broadcasting live on YouTube and on Facebook, your DMV deal makers as well, Facebook group. And, I wanted to kind of just have a basic discussion about the climate that we're in right now, dealing with this rampant worldwide global virus, what it's done to our local economy, what it's done to, especially focused on real estate in the Virginia, Washington, and Maryland markets. And I know you have a ton of experience with doing fix and flips and other strategies with that. So I thought it would be key for us to kind of bring ourselves on for our folks to watch, kind of where you see us in the marketplace, where you see the marketplace going. And then you had a presentation that we can actually share with everyone of the impact of this COVID-19. So take it away, Josh.
I guess, Chris, one of the fortunate things, I mean, I wish we were speaking under better circumstances, but one of the fortunate things, if you're a DMV real estate investor, I've been in the market in some capacity here since about 2004. Started dabbling on the side in those years. Didn't really get started, full on until about 2009, which is right around the time the market, tanked in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. But one of the things going for you here in the DMV region is that, as my mentor used to say, 35 cents out of every federal dollar comes back to this region. So in terms of being insulated from a catastrophic event like this, I mean, there's no area in the country that you could invest that is probably a better fit than here, in terms of protecting yourself. But no question, Chris, I mean, the last few weeks have had a devastating impact. Mm-hmm. I don't see that, about 2-3 weeks ago, I thought maybe we would see like a V-shaped recovery. Now my thoughts are turning to otherwise. There's just, and as you'll see, like, I've been thinking about a lot of the different things that have been going on in the last 7 or 10 days here, and you'll see a lot of that in these slides here. But yeah, I mean, if you go to the next slide, keep going. Next slide, one more. I mean, these are the impacts that you're seeing right now, even in the DC metro region in real estate, which is known to be one of the most robust markets in the country. Yeah. I mean, there's no question that even in good areas right now, I don't know what you're seeing up in Baltimore, but even in good areas of Fairfax County, I'm starting to see days on market increase.
What are you seeing? I mean, today is what, the 30th, March 30th? I'd say like in the last 2 weeks, what are you seeing the days on market extending to already? Just
honestly, I gave up my real estate license a few years back, and I unfortunately don't have access to the analytics as much, but my gut tells me that I see a lot of properties that would have sold in a day or less with multiple offers a month ago that are now sitting for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and it appears to have no offer. There definitely has been a major change. We were in a super strong seller's market a month ago before all this. Yep. And I mean, you've gone in Falls Church, for example, you've gone from about 18 active listings up to 30. And what would have sold, most of them in a day, are sitting now. There's definitely been a major change just in the inventory. And you throw into that, I don't know if you're familiar with the COVID-19 addendum. Have you seen those?
I have. I mean, I've heard of it. I'm not privy. I haven't actually looked through it.
So if you're a seller right now or a buyer, you're probably becoming accustomed to seeing these COVID-19 addendums. I think California was the first state to create one for their realtors. And essentially, if you look at this addendum in detail, it's something that primarily protects the buyer and gives a lot of uncertainty to a seller. So, I mean, a buyer has an ability to increase their, financing contingencies, their ability to close in the contract, delays the contract out even 30 or 60 days, ability to get the deposit back in full should they not be able to close in a certain time frame post-pandemic, or they lose their jobs because of the pandemic. There's just a lot of verbiage in those COVID-19 addendums that leaves a seller uncertain when or if they're going to sell their property that is supposedly under contract. And then you couple that in, if you're a builder right now, like we are, I mean, government operations like Fairfax County, I mean, they went to virtual operation in under 7 days, and it's just all over the place right now. As far as getting a permit right now or getting a plan reviewed, I couldn't tell you right now when any of our plans that are in process are going to issue permits.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind me asking, how many active projects are you basically stalled on?
So we've actually unloaded some of our inventory. So right now we've offloaded a bunch, and we're down to maybe, I think we're at like 6 or 7 active that are left.
Okay.
And we've offloaded about 3 or 4 in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
So
yeah.
And by the way, like if you're a builder as well, I mean, supply chain is taking a hit right now too. So one of our big suppliers is Carter Lumber. Our representative from Carter came back last week. He's like, OSB sheathing, if you're familiar, jumped from $9 a sheet to $17 in 3 days last week.
Wow.
So if you're a builder, like thinking about building right now, that's a whole other layer of uncertainty.
Right.
In terms of, what is it going to take cost-wise to finish your projects?
Yeah. If you're not sitting on materials and you're paying whatever that increase is, I mean, that's drastic, So
I mean, I would say overall effects to the market are very vast. And I mean, to throw into that, the mortgage uncertainty too, the credit markets.
Yeah.
One of the mentors I had also over the last 5 or 10 years said, always look at the credit markets first to see where everything's going. And, real estate's great. We can all talk about properties and how great this is and that is. But at the end of the day, the credit markets dictate the real estate market. And if the credit markets are locking up, which they are, then with certainty that there's going to be a dramatic impact to real estate. And that's exactly what you're seeing right now. You're seeing FHA might not even exist in a month from now, the way things are looking.
I actually haven't thought about that, but yeah, wow.
3.5% down payments, that might be gone. VA is already, and FHA right now, revising their guidelines almost daily, increasing restrictions on borrowers, lower debt ratio limits, more reserve requirements, lower loan amounts. So across the board, I mean, jumbo was in flux for a few days last week. Now supposedly jumbo loans are okay again, but across the board, the credit markets are in total flux. Yeah,
and we've seen that obviously just in the global market. Yeah. So, and now you're showing here possible projection around 20% unemployment.
People are saying right now that, I mean, we had, I think, the biggest spike in unemployment in our history of the last 100 years last week. I think the first weekly reporting was like over 3 million unemployed nationwide. That was already like, I think, 8 times larger than 2008 or something along those lines.
That was based on people that had applied for unemployment last week?
Applied for unemployment. And that number might actually be dramatically low, because if you're following the broadcasts on the news, a lot of people weren't even able to get through the unemployment lines because they weren't, prepared to handle that surge in capacity of people filing.
Yeah, I even saw, I guess it was early part of last week, so around like the 24th or 25th of March, that like servers in DC unemployment, it was just stalling the servers. There were so many people, trying to fill out these forms, and I understand. I mean, I was one of those trying to log in, trying to figure out what am I going to do, and obviously I have a business that's now stalled. We have no work coming in, and we have active real estate that we don't know what we're going to do. I mean, we own them outright, but at the same time, it's like, well, how am I going to start a project now? Because all of my numbers are all over the place, like you just said, with material costs. You might have budgeted 30 grand. You might be at 50 now, just with the inflation of material cost.
I do want to encourage your viewers that it's all not doom and gloom here.
Right.
I believe we're setting up a story here that also, if you're a serious real estate investor, you want to be. I think honestly, from what I saw in 2008 and 9, and that's where a lot of money was made at the bottom of the market or when it was declining.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a serious real estate investor, you want to be. We're probably experiencing what might be a once in generation generational opportunity to create wealth here. Unfortunately, it's given the circumstances, it's hard to talk about money and creating a fortune, but for investors who are looking to change their lives in the future, I mean, we are at a significant point in our history probably to do that.
I mean, I've said it, and I'm sure you've heard it too. I've had people mention that some real estate investors target people who are potentially losing their property, and my honest answer every time is, I'm actually the person that's helping them get out of that problem. I was not the person that put them in that problem, and I don't do a lot on the wholesale market, so I don't interact with the actual sellers directly that much. But some people will say it's predatory, and I don't think it's predatory. You're actually giving them an exit strategy they had no idea about.
To be honest, Chris, I think what's coming, because real estate delays, like you see the stock market tanking,
mm-hmm.
but in my experience from the last 12 years that I've been an investor, a serious investor, every time the stock market tanks, real estate tends to move at a slower moving average. So you're going to see an impact to real estate typically like with a very large delay. It could be 4 to 6 months out before the real estate market reacts.
Yeah.
But I think people who need our services, it's only going to grow in the next few months.
Yeah. But like what you were just saying, I mean, you're saying potentially June, maybe even longer, right? And then, what type of time frame would that return be? The bounce back in a sense.
So I think honestly, like what you're seeing right now is there's three things that have always driven a real estate market, and it comes down to jobs, the credit markets, and consumer confidence. And right now, we might be on the verge of unemployment, larger than potentially even the Great Depression was, if you can imagine that.
No.
The credit markets are already like all over the map, very unstable. And with all of that being said, I think consumer confidence is on the verge of plummeting. So when you put those three factors together in terms of what drives the real estate market, I think if you're an investor right now, you're seeing, especially if you've been an investor for a while, you're seeing a ton of opportunity coming in the future months ahead.
Right. And now, would you compare? So right now, where the real estate market is in comparison to 08 or 09, technically speaking, right now we're still up, but we just don't know how far down it's going to go.
100% correct.
Okay.
And I think, honestly, I think the big variable here, everybody can do a model. I used to do modeling, for the government research labs. Everybody can do a model. And unfortunately, no one's ever been able to model the stock market, for example, that effectively over a long period of time because there's too many variables. You can model, for example, the stock market over a very short duration with pretty good certainty, but over long durations, that becomes a lot harder. And I think right now your big variable is the length of the quarantine. I think the longer the quarantine lasts, the longer health remains an issue in this country, the longer the economy shut down to zero, the harder it's going to be for us to, recover from this, the longer that recovery is going to be. Yeah. And at the current moment, I mean, even when you look at China's quarantine, China's not even 100% certain right now that, hopefully they've contained it, but are we going to see like the Spanish flu, a bounce back in the fall and a resurgence of cases? Nobody really knows right now.
That's true. That's true.
So that length of quarantine and that unknown about health is, I think you're driving that recovery longer. The longer this drags out, the longer the recovery is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you got to remember, it's not going to be like this spike. It's going to be this long, trending up. And then like the market, if you watch, you will have a surge in, 7 to 14-day period, but something's going to cause that to kind of hesitate a little bit. So you'll see it drop a little bit as well,
I mean, the other side of that too is that right now we have a GDP of like 19 trillion annually. You just shut it down for at least a month already.
Yeah.
You've put in 2 trillion in government, cash infusion. That's only 10 or 11% of national GDP. Every month that we drag this on, that bailout, becomes insignificant. We're going to need another one. And Congress is already talking about we're going to need a second bailout, probably on the order of the size of the first one.
Right. But, funny because I saw recently posted, I don't know if you saw this, the vast amount of corporate CEOs that have resigned in the last probably 45 days or so.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that it's an insider thing, but that kind of smells a little bad to me. Like, why was this long list of corporate CEOs just, right at one after another? I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And then, we're in the time now dealing with this pandemic. It's like, okay, yeah.
I think, I hope that we all get back to work soon, but I think, we're talking June right now, which is already a month longer in quarantine. Imagine if this goes all the way through the summertime.
Yeah. I know
we're on the side we get.
Yeah, I know where you are. Just even last week, the governor of Virginia closed the schools for the entire school year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a week ago, before we had any type of real quarantine, in play.
And I think, Bill Gates said we needed a 6 to 10 week national quarantine to really get over that first surge.
Yeah.
And we still haven't, to this point, we still don't have a national quarantine. So I just don't know, piecemealing the quarantine might extend the overall quarantine out even longer than a June 1st deadline. But I guess it remains to be seen.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Just today, we were talking earlier, the governor of Maryland just issued a stay-at-home effective today at 12 o'clock, and it's being enforced as of 8 p.m. It's a stay-at-home order. And I saw just a brief headline. It's like $5,000 penalty and or possibly an arrest if you're caught not going to a medical appointment or not going to the grocery store. And that's pretty drastic. It's not like stay in place, but I think it's a step that needs to be taken. I've been out a few times. I've been taking, my daily walk just to get out and exercise. And the amount of people that are congregating, at the corner stores and all these places. And I'm like, they just, I don't want to say they have no idea. I just think they're making very poor decisions,
The thing is also, at the end of all this, you got a quarantine going on. At the end of all this, you got a $19 trillion GDP. Are people really going to return to those same consumer spending habits that they had, pre-quarantine? Are people really going to rush out to a movie theater? Are they going to rush out to go to a public restaurant? Are they going to rush out and take group fitness exercise classes?
Yep.
I don't think we're going to return to exactly where we were even post-quarantine, because there's going to be that whole behavioral, uncertainty, like, oh my God, what if I get it again? Or what if someone in the class is sick? I think regardless of the fact, I don't think our GDP is going right back to where it was with the flick of a switch at this point.
Wow. Yeah. Which brings to a great point on your presentation here is the kind of the cycle that is occurring.
So one of the real estate folks that I followed early on in my career was Dave Lindahl.
Okay.
And if you haven't read Dave Lindahl's Emerging Real Estate Markets book, I suggest you guys go on Amazon and buy that book immediately.
Okay.
If you're familiar with how real estate cycles move, the classic definition of a real estate cycle has always been the expansion contraction model. An expansion contraction model has been around, I think, since the 1920s. Dave Lindahl took the expansion contraction model and rephrased it his own sort of cycle. He calls it seller phase 1 and 2, buyer phase 1 and 2. And he breaks the same expansion contraction cycle up into those 4 checkpoints. And it's a slight variation of the expansion contraction model, but essentially what we were all probably in at least the Eastern and West Coast markets previous to this, most of those residential markets on the housing side were probably in, mid to late seller phase 1. Construction was full on. We were expanding. People were building like crazy. Mm-hmm. Prices were still going up, but not as quickly as early on in the cycle. Demand from buyers was really strong. Consumer confidence was really strong. Everyone felt good about real estate. So if you think back just where we were a month ago in most residential markets, that's probably where we were. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, I would say in the DC region, probably most markets nationwide, we transition in a matter of probably 3 or 4 weeks from mid to late seller phase 1 into probably mid seller phase 2.
Okay.
What does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mid seller phase 2 is essentially where investors start to realize that product is not selling as quickly anymore. Inventory starts to creep up. There tends to be more sellers now than there are buyers, or it's creeping in that direction at least.
Yeah.
And right around the late stage of seller phase 2, that's not where you want to be. The late seller phase 2 is sort of like a falling knife. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're probably early mid seller phase 2 right now.
Okay.
And you might, if we keep going the direction we're going, then maybe we see that in 4 to 6 months from now, maybe longer, just depending on the market, depending on, all real estate is local. So like here in the DC region, I think we're a little more insulated with government positions and so forth. But depending on what market you're in, I mean, that transition is going to happen faster or slower.
Yeah, but I mean, so I have a buddy in Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area, and what they don't have, unlike Northern Virginia, a lot of their real estate there's not much appreciation. So, I don't want to say I'm curious to see how it affects that, but if you don't have the appreciation, and then your costs and everything else are going all over the place, I don't know how drastic that would be. And then, as you said, and I'll let everyone joining us know, this is not like a scare tactic that we're doing. We're just kind of sitting here contemplating, calculating, and figuring out what this epidemic could potentially have, the effect it could have on the real estate market.
I would say this, Chris, like, I'm not a fortune teller. None of us are. I've seen a lot of talks with investors from all over the country talking about what the impact is. But I mean, the bottom line is nobody's a fortune teller here. I would tell you this, a dramatic shift from 2008 to now is that housing was largely very affordable. If you look at affordability indexes nationwide, pandemic, real estate was actually very affordable, almost across the country universally in residential. That's a very dramatic shift from 2008 when, real estate was largely unaffordable. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know if there's going to be a major price drop at all. I don't know if we're going to see just a flattening of pricing. I think that largely depends on the market. But I do think at the end of the day, what you really need to think about today as an investor is none of us are fortune tellers, but how can all of us protect ourselves? How can we all continue to make money, maybe even make money on a very wide scale, but also protect ourselves and our businesses and our income and whatever money we've made to date. So I think, how do you set up a good defense right now for your business? I think that should be your number one concern. And as far as fortune telling, I mean, we can all make projections. I don't know if any of them are correct,
Yeah.
but at least if we play defense, we'll save ourselves from all the anguish.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think for many of your Facebook group members in the DMV market is kind of just the uncertainty right now. You know, I mean, for you as an investor, you said you're 7 active projects. Like, what was your sit down with your team? What was the biggest concern?
So honestly, like, being in the business for so many years now, before all this even happened, for folks that know us, I mean, our business model was actually made for times like this. As a builder, you know, especially as a luxury builder, and we don't do luxury homes, and this market right now that we're seeing is the reason that we don't do luxury homes. We do what's called affordable luxury. So even before all this happened, our business model was set up to be defensive for the last 8 years. You know, we only went into good locations. We only went into locations that were desirable. We built a product at an affordable price, you know, not at the pricing of a luxury builder, which is like 1.3 or 1.4 in Northern Virginia. We cater to, you know, folks who are at the $850 to $1 million range who still wanted a great product. So,
Yeah.
you know, even with that being said, my biggest fear was, you know, taking on inventory that would have a longer holding time, you know, sitting on stuff that wasn't even under roof yet with, you know, the government county shut down, you know, not being able to get a permit approved or not being able to do a plan revision or inspection. You know, costs from holding investment capital, just dragging out the holding times. But at the end of all that, we made a bunch of different decisions. A was like to double down on what we've already done. So if you're looking at your current inventory right now, this is what we did. And we started doing this 4 weeks ago. Get rid of everything in your inventory that you don't feel are your best projects. You know, cut them, slash them, unload them, get rid of them. So that's what we did. The stuff that we don't want to be a part of, that we didn't think was our prime properties, we got rid of them. B, look at your liquidity. You know, even for the last 8 or 10 years, liquidity was always a major concern for us. A lot of developers, you know, they over leverage, they spend every last dollar, and they don't have a lot of reserves. Right now, liquidity, reserves is everything. So unfortunately, like, if you had a good business plan before, you're probably okay right now. If you didn't have a good business plan before, start looking at your, you know, your liquidity and your burn rate. Your burn rate being like, what are your fixed and variable costs in your business right now? How can you tighten that up? How can you create sort of a mean and lean machine? Because right now, a lot of real estate investors are expecting that, you know, the next 6 or 12 months, if you're very conservative, your earning power could be very close to zero. Your revenue for that real estate investment business could be zero for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
In our business, we projected 24 months of reserves to weather a storm.
Okay.
So start looking at your burn rate, start looking at your liquidity, your reserves, start looking at the projects that you currently have. Is it worth holding on to all of them? Are there certain ones that, you know, it's just not worth the risk? I can tell you that really wealthy investors don't look at real estate investment like smaller startup or medium-sized investors. What wealthy investors look at is principal capital preservation first and foremost. You know, instead of looking at, am I going to make 100,000 on that deal? Start looking at, am I going to get back my 300,000 that I put into that property from day one?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good point, because as we know, whether you're dealing with a traditional bank or a private lender or hard money lender, that money costs you while you're not working on your project too, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess, Chris, for your viewers, my big advice would be go back to your business model. Too many, you know, you have a lot of people have a lot of downtime right now at home.
Yep.
Most people in real estate especially do not create a business plan, not a very good business plan at the minimum. Go back and define your business plan. what's going to work right now in this market. What's going to work right now in this market is dealing first and foremost with clients who can afford your product.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing buy and hold, do your renters have stable income right now that they're going to be able to pay you? And a renter who's going to pay you right now in this market, 100% for sure, is someone either who's got subsidized rent or has a job that's very stable. So like for us, for example, we like, tenants who have government salaries, tenants who are military, very stable, salary base. So, and
Right.
the same thing is true of like on the resale side. Do you want to sell properties to the folks who are probably going to be in that 20% unemployment line? Or
Mm-hmm.
do you want to sell houses to people who have, stable jobs right now that if they have to move are going to move and be able to qualify for a loan to buy your property? So I would start thinking about in your business plan, who's your end user and can your end user perform in this market and condition?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think it's kind of it's so up in the air, that every day we're learning a new statistic. We're hearing a new report of either infected cases that have been reported and tested. Um, you know, it's such an unknown of where it is.
I,
Um,
I honestly think, Chris, though, at the end of the day, like what you're seeing realistically in the market is that the weaker businesses, be it, the retail ones or whatever type of business they were,
mhm.
the weaker businesses with the smaller margins, they're all on the verge or cusp of going under. And the same could be said of like real estate investors. If you had a weak business model before,
Mhm.
you're going to be exposed right now. And if you have a strong business model before, you're not only going to be able to weather the storm, you're going to be able to recover so dramatically that you're going to increase your market share.
Yep.
So right now, sort of the time to just go back and look at everything that you do in your business. Who do I cater to? Where do I buy properties? What type of properties do I do? How long do they take? What are my margins? Start looking at what you do and how you do it. And
Mhm.
if the stuff that you have right now on your plate doesn't fit that model,
Yep.
then get rid of it. And even if you have to take a small loss today, I can tell you in the grand scheme of things, it's worth it. So as a company, maybe what you're doing right now is you're repositioning yourself.
Mhm.
And even for ourselves, I mean, our business is changing as well. And the slide you have up on the screen today, this is what we're looking at right now. Cash offers today from us,
Mhm.
you're 10 to 15% or more lower than what we offered you a month ago.
Yep.
And we're going about things two different ways. And if you're a wholesaler out there, there's a lot of wholesalers in the DMV group. There's a lot of wholesalers just in general. What's something that's going to get you through this market that's going to make you different from everybody else? You're going to go in with an offer that's a lot lower right now, that's cash, which is going to give your end user a better margin. A lot of wholesale deals the last 1 or 2 years now were marginal at best. Those deals where it's 185K buy price and 285K ARV, that's not going to work anymore. Those deals were marginal and only worked in a speculative market. They worked in a market that, as I highlighted before, was the seller phase one market.
Mhm.
That type of speculative deal doesn't work now. Now we're back to the old rules of the game. 65% ARV minus repair, 60% ARV minus repair, 75% ARV minus repair, depending where you are. If it's Northern Virginia, Arlington,
Mhm.
Fairfax County, you're probably 75%. If you're in PG County, you're probably 65, maybe less. You're
Wow.
back to the old rules of the game in terms of cash offers. None of these marginal deals anymore. In terms of the second offer that you're making, and I strongly advise you guys to start making second offers,
Yeah.
financing is drying up. Financing is becoming extremely hard to get, whether it's on the retail side for your end user or whether it's on the investor side. As a wholesaler, start offering a creative offer for option two. Start going to a seller and thinking about, can I get a subject to deal? Can I get a lease option deal? Can I do an owner finance option deal with this seller? What if I could bring my end user, not only potentially, if I can't get my end user who's a rehabber or a buy and hold person, a cash offer deal that makes sense? What if I could bring them a deal that has financing in place already with, aggressive or, terms that are agreeable? If you're a serious buyer like we are, if you brought us a deal that either A is a great cash deal or B is a deal that has great financing in place already, either of those two options looks attractive. So I think wholesalers who are going to survive this type of storm, you're going to have to start learning how to make creative offers and providing your end buyer, financing that already comes with the deal. That's going to be key.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, when you say that, I don't want to go full detail, but like doing a creative offer for those that are watching that they don't know what subject to is, can you give them just not a full description, but have them understand what that term means?
So let me give you an example. Like in the last 4 or 5 years, we've created probably 50% of the US, I read, has on average 45 to 50% equity in their home right now. That's a big change from 2008 when everyone was trying to do a short sale. So let's imagine now that the average homeowner, take Northern Virginia for example, in Fairfax County. Let's imagine that the average homeowner owes $350,000 on their mortgage, and the house recently pre-pandemic was evaluated to be $625. Almost 50% equity. What I can do now, and I'm going to run my numbers to make it work the right way, but what I can do now is I can come to you and say, hey, Chris, I know you want to sell and I know you want to get a pretty fair price. Look, if I offered you cash, let's say for that same deal, and based on repairs and everything else, let's say my cash offer to you was $300,000. It's lower than what you owe. You're going to probably say no.
Right.
I'm saying, okay, Chris, here's the other option I can provide for you. I know you can't take the $300K cash because you owe $350. What I can do, Chris, is I'll take your mortgage subject to. So I'll give you $370. You'll walk with $20,000 now, and we'll assume your existing mortgage in place. So we'll take over your mortgage payment of $2,000 a month, and you'll walk with $20,000 at the table. That's like a subject to type deal.
Right.
That's going to become a lot more commonplace, I believe, in the next few months.
Yeah, exactly. And for those watching that don't know, that loan stays in my name. If Josh and his company was buying it, but then they just take over those payments for that. So it's a great way. Also with lease option, I have a feeling if the lenders aren't lending and FHA and all this stuff doesn't know what they're doing, lease option is going to be a very valid thing because people might not qualify but can totally afford a property are going to say, hey, Josh, well, I'd love to enter a lease option. I'm going to give you a non-refundable down payment on this house. And then Josh and his company will come back and say, here you go, Chris, here's your monthly term. And then here's your purchase price. And you let us know what term you want, basically.
Chris, I do want to point out one thing that, like 2008 and 9, one thing that always troubled me when I was a newer investor. How do you guys recognize the bottom in the market? How do you know? That always bothered me. Like, how do I know if I'm at the bottom?
Yeah.
And looking back historically at it now, and I missed out on a golden opportunity because like a lot of your viewers today, probably they're walking with a lot of fear right now and they're not certain. I think, you've heard this before, like a lack of knowledge creates fear. I want you to show them one slide really quickly on rent ratios.
Yeah. If
you show them that slide on rental ratios, I think that removes all your fear, and it did for me. It talks about 13 and 15 times rent ratios. If you could pull that slide up.
Got it.
This is how you know if you're operating with a defensive posture as an investor. So we talked about a lower cash offer than before, meeting the numbers that are traditional if you're a rehab investor. We talked about giving a creative offer, whether you want to hold it or you want to wholesale it or renovate it as a second option. We also talked about holding on to the best locations. If you look back, for example, at Arlington, Virginia, Arlington, Virginia continued to rise in value through the entire Great Recession in 2008, 9, and 10. It still went up. It never dropped. So when you talk about like the best locations or like emerging neighborhoods, location cures most everything. If you're like inside the Beltway, for example, in Northern Virginia, those properties tend to have more stability than stuff outside the Beltway. The further you are from the Beltway, the more dramatic or volatile the pricing was. And if you use that as a historical, landmark,
Yeah.
I would suggest that you start to focus in on, better locations to buy, better locations to make offers. Go after the Arlingtons, go after, areas that seem to be out of reach previously, because those solid locations and great properties, those are hard to go wrong with, especially if you follow the rule I'm about to show you right now. So I realized, looking back at Falls Church real estate 10 years later, that realistically you could tell that you were close to or very close to a bottom in Falls Church when you were at a 13 or 15 times rent ratio. And what does that mean? That means that if a property today could rent with very light renovation, let's say 20 or 30K, you could just turn the kitchen and a couple bathrooms over. If you could do that and get $2,500 a month in rent, you're somewhere between 390 to 450 as a bottom for that property in the market.
Oh.
Guess what? We're buying property right now at wholesale. We're closing in 2 weeks on 2 of them that fit this criteria to a T. So
Okay.
I think you go back and look at the rent ratios in your market from 2008 or 9. It's a pretty good indicator as far as if you're getting a good price or not. And the same could be said if you're a commercial investor. You're probably starting to look at cap rates. What did cap rates look like in the last Great Recession? That's a defensive position to be as an investor, and know that you're protecting yourself.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So we got one right now that, if you're looking at what's on the screen right now, we got one right now under contract at 375. We got another one at 450. They're both very close to the the monthly rent that you're seeing on the screen. So, retail values are easily over 650 on those properties. So the bottom line to your viewers is that there's deals to be made right now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be that 90% that's living in fear right now. I mean, what we're seeing right now is a tremendous opportunity to make offers, do deals. But for those of us that are just going to sit at home, when we have a ton of time on our hands to do stuff, and just sit there empty-handed, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's time to get out there, make the right offers, structure the right deals, help people that honestly are going to need a lot of help in the coming months ahead.
Yeah. So like on that example, on a contract you have now at 375, what is your all-in investment going to be as far as the rehab on it to get it up?
So originally we looked at it as a teardown, but I mean, as a defensive investor, you buy deals based on multiple exit strategies, right? And at this point, one of our backup strategies there is to put 20K in and just rent it.
Okay.
And a lot of what we're under contract on right now is stuff that, we can either renovate it, we can tear it down, or we can easily convert it into a rental property if need be.
Yep. That makes sense.
And by the way, if it doesn't fit those criteria,
Mm-hmm.
that's the type of stuff that we're saying, you know what, it's not a good fit for us right now. Let's get rid of it.
Okay. And then also, I know you had touched on it a bit, but some of the changes in how our followers are doing their marketing.
So one of the things about quarantine, and you think about this, honestly, as an investor, I always like to follow the Warren Buffett rule. When there's fear out there, it's time to hop in. Yep. When everybody else is doing one thing, you do another. Yep. And if you think about it right now, what is the majority of America doing? They're sitting at home and they're on Facebook, chatting with their friends.
Yep.
So, we all talk about cold calling and reaching out to sellers and how it's always, the results are always mixed up and down, whether you can get them. Right now, you have a captured audience. Yep. They're sitting at home with nothing better to do but time on their hands. If I was an investor out there just getting started today, right now, 10 times your cold calling efforts right now. Get on the phones, work the phones. The deals are out there. The only thing you really got to know is, am I getting the deal at the right price? And that I will concede that a lot of people may not understand what the right pricing right now is. What is the right offer right now? What are the right terms to give to someone? But if you can get that under your belt, right now is the time to 10 times your marketing efforts. Work the phones, get on social media, get on LinkedIn, get on Facebook, talk to people, get business to business referrals going. I can't see a better time than now to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen people post for the last 2 weeks that your potential next deal is sitting at home right now, waiting on you to, give them a call, literally.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And they're probably a lot more, reasonable right now than they were 4 weeks ago in terms of, coming to terms on a deal with you than they were.
Oh, they might be even more motivated,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just because of the uncertainty, I think, the follow up, you can find everybody on Facebook. It's not hard. I mean, I found Josh on Facebook. He and I have never met each other, and here we are. I joined his group and saw some great, comments, and a lot of like your DMV group on Facebook is great because you have such a wide array. I mean, it's a private group, so it is vetted information. It's a controlled environment of people that are willing to help each other and share information. So you use Josh's forum as well. It's a great place also. I've met a bunch of wholesalers on there. They'll Facebook message a deal to me or something. Hey, are you interested in this neighborhood or this area? So good resource. I figured I'd drop that. But
Chris, I definitely think also like what your viewers are going after is a little different from what they were going after a month ago. I think the conversation about lots and land and tear down properties, that's right now at the moment a thing of the past. Especially when the market cycle changes, new construction starts to dry up. Right now, your viewers should be focusing, in my opinion, on quicker turn type projects that need less work, renovation type projects, multifamily apartment buildings, things that you're not going to be sitting on or building for more than 2.5 months or 3 months.
Yeah.
So what you're hunting and where you're hunting, it's changing a little bit. How you're structuring your deals is changing a little bit. You're making some adjustments to, everything that you do in your business, but the business is out there. You just got to make those adjustments.
So would you recommend, so the numbers, obviously the gross numbers, the purchase price, the rehab price, and I understand, rehab cost is potentially going to be going up because of cost of material. If you still use like that 70% rule, even though I know your numbers specific will change, I think if you stay in that same formula, you probably won't go wrong. Would you agree? Or
I would keep in mind that, and we've wholesaled a few deals in the last few weeks as well. Your wholesale out sales are going to be lower because the buyers who are still in the game right now, like us,
they're looking for deals.
They've been around for a while. They're well capitalized. They're not, in general, relying on hard money lenders that have gone under. So you're going to have pickier buyers that are looking for more, defensive positions. So whatever you thought was a deal a month ago, stretch that back a little bit more to ensure that if you're a wholesaler, you're going to get paid. But then again, like as a second backup offer, and I can't, encourage you enough, if you can bring a serious buyer who can perform a deal with financing already locked in, where, an end user like us is bringing minimal cash to the table, that can be a win-win as well.
Right. Yeah. So, man, we've been on here for 50 minutes. But all right. So, like to summarize, obviously you want to put your info out there for everyone to know. But, in summary, you're looking at what, 1 to 2 weeks on the short term.
I guess in summary, the changes that we're advising today is, as we talked about, your cash offers are much lower. As a backup option, you're doing a creative offer.
Okay.
You're also looking at better assets, better locations, stuff that you were locked out of previously, like the Arlingtons of the world. You're now back in, and you're all in. You're looking for those good locations, those live, work, play areas. You're going all in on those areas. You're pulling away from the lot and land deals. You're pulling away from the luxury, real estate market deals. You're focusing more on the first-time homebuyer type deals. You're focusing on who your end users are and what they'll be able to use. If you're going after buildings or houses that are conducive to renting, is that tenant base in that area going to be able to pay you? If you're going after that resale market, you're going after areas where that end user is going to be able to afford to buy your product. So if you can make those adjustments in your in your business, I guarantee you that you're going to be successful. The other thing to do immediately is start to look at the internal finances of your business. You want to start to run it lean and mean. Get rid of that overhead that's not getting you the results that you should be. And I would also highly encourage your users to 10 times their efforts on those lower cost marketing, like the cold calling, getting on Facebook, on social media, connecting, business to business referrals, all that low cost marketing stuff that you can do right now is the time to do it. And the last thing on the short term, get aligned with people who have been in the game for a long time. Too many people, too many gurus, they flash their bling in the up years of the last 5 years. And unfortunately, like all that stuff that you learn from a lot of gurus, it's not going to work anymore. The stuff that worked the last 5 years, it is not going to work. If it does work, it's not going to leave you as an investor in that defensive position. And you don't want to be somebody who's rolling all your eggs out there right now. You got to have a strong defense. So align yourself with folks who've been around for 12, 15, 20, 30 years and have seen multiple cycles of this. That's really the short-term game for everyone, myself included.
Yeah. So I see here at the bottom, you guys do work with and do joint ventures with other wholesalers, potential investors. Are you currently looking to take on more joint ventures going forward?
100%. I mean, everything that we talked about today, like all the areas that we were previously locked out of, if you look at like emerging neighborhoods in the Washington, D.C. region, there's some stronger emerging neighborhoods than others. Those areas that we were previously locked out of, we're going all in. If you find deals in Arlington, we're going to either buy them and hold them, possibly flip them. But, we're looking for opportunities in even better locations right now. And we're continuing also in the areas that we've always been in. Falls Church is a really strong submarket in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we had it.
Still believe really strongly in that. So if you're going out looking at deals, definitely reach out. We can help you underwrite them. We can help you maybe figure out a creative solution to work through with the seller.
Yeah.
We're also looking at commercial properties. I think now is going to be one of those times in history where commercial opportunities present themselves. You all saw like extremely low cap rates the last 4 or 5 years, and I think we're going to see a reversal on that as well.
Yeah. Have you had much experience in commercial?
A little bit. We've flipped some commercial lot deals, some land deals.
Okay.
Not so much buy and hold. To be honest with you, it's hard to focus on more than one thing in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt that going all in with residential, if you added commercial to that, is kind of a distraction.
Yeah.
And honestly, like commercial deals, they were like a needle in a haystack for the last 4 or 5 years. Cap rates were so compressed.
Mm-hmm.
It was just really hard to find one.
So
unless you're doing it full time, and that wasn't really our core focus.
So your organization's gut instinct right now is buy on long term?
Find anything where, either it's a really strong asset that has multiple exit strategies. So like, let's say it's a deal in Falls Church or like Arlington where, we have options. We can either renovate it and flip it. We can renovate it and hold it. We can just hold it. We can get it with a very low amount of cash down. We're looking at anything and everything in terms of, but strong locations only.
Okay. And that,
I think in terms of Washington, D.C., the farther you go from the Beltway, those users are going to have higher unemployment rates in general. The people that are inside the Beltway tend to be, government positions, military positions, or very close to the Beltway.
Okay.
I think the farther out you go, the more unstable it's going to be.
So would you guys be looking like South 95, Stafford, Fredericksburg or no?
That's not for us.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. No, we're looking like for the stronger markets that are going to withstand. Arlington, Falls Church, Annandale, anything that has a stronger school system.
Yep.
Honestly, when a market weakens, people have choices, and you have to ask yourself as an investor, if a person has 5 choices of property, is this one going to be one that they'll even consider, when the opportunity has 5 available for them? And I don't see that. You saw it already in the Great Recession. Stafford, Woodbridge, Manassas, those areas plummeted by like 50-60% because people started to see like, well, I can live a lot closer to the city now for almost the same price. What do you know? They're moving. They're moving closer to the city center, and prices just tanked.
Yeah. I don't want to say the last thing, but what would you suggest for an investor or a rehabber that's mid-project right now?
That's a tough one because we're in that same circumstance on several right now as well. There's not much you can do when you're mid-project. You just got to, focus on your liquidity for one.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you're not overextending yourself right now. Make sure you got at least 6 or 12 months reserves. In my opinion, I think 24 is better. But I would definitely, focus on the liquidity of your company right now because you're going to have to hold on. There's no question.
Yeah. Would you recommend trying to refi out of it? Let's say I was 9 months into a hard money loan right now and my project stalled,
I think it depends if you started or you haven't. If you haven't started the project at all, maybe you're changing the scope of work on that project, which is what we're considering on a few of them.
Okay.
Maybe you scale down the scope of work, or maybe you turn it into a rental, or maybe you got it at a good price already and it doesn't really matter. It really comes down to what did you buy it at and what was your margin going to be on the deal. So I think everyone's situation is going to be a little different.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, trying times, right? We just don't know. That's the biggest thing is we're trying to speculate and calculate as best as possible, but with the change of
I would show them that one recession slide. That's the only thing that kind of piqued my interest.
Yep.
When you look at that, and history usually is a good indicator of the future in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about 24% unemployment in the Great Depression, which lasted 3 years and 7 months, which, by the way, like real estate did come down. I think it was like 35 or 40%, but real estate didn't come down in every recession over the last 100 years. It really varied widely depending on the type of recession it was. But even if you use this as a guide, we're probably going to be well over that 10% threshold in unemployment this time around.
Yeah.
I just don't see how at this point we don't have a recession for at least 12 plus months on the horizon. If history is our guide, I just don't see how a recession doesn't last at least that long. I think there's too many what you want to call secondary effects in the marketplace right now for it not to be. The Fed keeps pumping medicine on the problem, and then we keep getting all these other issues popping up. I just think this is going to be a lot longer than we're projecting at the moment.
Yeah. It is a little frustrating if you understand what the Fed is doing, because the Fed is loaning it at such a low percentage. What is it? Between 0 and 0.25%. But the banks haven't adjusted their rates yet because prime hasn't changed.
Right.
So if you're borrowing right now, you're borrowing at the pre-existing rate that your lender had. You're not buying it at. You're not getting that loan at 0%. The Fed's loaning it to the institutions at that percentage.
Mm-hmm. That's can we snap back in 12 plus months? Possibly.
Yeah.
But I definitely think, at least for the foreseeable future, as an investor, the number one thing is, put yourself in a defensive position to protect yourself.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess we're adding value and providing kind of our scope of it. Let's hope that we are on point for like the maybe 3 to 6 month curve. And maybe we should touch base in a couple months and kind of see where we are and kind of retract and say, well, this did happen, that didn't happen. And, what adjustments have you done? What adjustments have I made? Because right now it's just the unknown. We're trying to be smart about it, sure, but not really knowing. So Josh, what is the best way? Let me go back to that last slide. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, your organization.
So our director of acquisitions is Roger Martin. So if you guys have a deal that you're working on and you're not sure how to get it through, or you're not sure if you got the right price or terms, please reach out to us and we'll help you work through it, whether it's a JV or maybe we'll even be your end buyer. I don't know. But we're constantly looking for deals even now.
Yeah, cool, man. All right, well, that's all I have. Guys, thanks for joining in. Stay safe. Keep washing your hands. Anything else you wanted to add to close?
Chris, one thing I forgot to mention on the broadcast, and it was brought to my attention last week.
Okay.
For a lot of you guys that are small businesses, real estate investors, real estate agents, Chris, I know you own a printing business.
Yep.
SBA does have, as part of that bailout package, really attractive loans that are being dispersed to folks like us.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually, in many cases, if you're approved for that loan, it's like 3.75% interest. And if the loan proceeds are used for like your payroll and other sorts of things like business related expenses, potentially the entire principal could be forgiven, or at the minimum delayed 4 years. I don't know if you've seen that on the SBA's website or not.
Mm-hmm. Actually, what you should do, I'll put a link in the video description of this video, so anybody in the next month or two can still get access to it.
So we talked about liquidity in your business. I mean, that's one way to sort of help that liquidity is potentially getting an SBA loan, especially for a lot of us that have been shut down for what might be 8 to 10 weeks or more.
Yep. Good info. All right, man. Anything else you got?
Chris, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the program.
Yep. All right, guys. Don't forget to like the content, subscribe down below. This is Chris Birch signing off.